Hello there everybody, my name is Bloomer Brown and welcome to what I am billing as episode 2 of a series that, for lack of a better name, I'm going to be calling Thoughts in My Thinking Brain. I'm not entirely sure if I came up with that myself, since it sounds a little bit too creative to be one of mine, but I'm going to run with it anyway for now. Now, it is fair to say that I am not the most consistent person on the platform, and as far as format goes, I would expect this series to have a very loose one indeed. Today's episode, in fact, is going to be borrowing a little bit from Philip DeFranco, and in fact I was actually planning on doing a parody of the Philip DeFranco show, but some of the stuff I wanted to talk about today is pretty serious, and I didn't want to kind of detract from that or make it seem like I was trying to be respectful or insulting towards anybody. I'm also going to be leaving some of the names out of the title and tags so as not to make it seem as though I am just trying to capitalise or gain exposure off the back of fellow YouTuber situations, because as I say, some of the things I want to talk about are pretty heavy topics indeed. Simone Giertz, for those of you who are not familiar with her work, is a YouTuber who, shall we say, experiments with robots here on YouTube. Commonly referring to herself as the queen of shitty robots, she has deservedly been growing like crazy over the past few years and has collaborated with the likes of Physics Girl, Rhett and Link from Good Mythical Morning, and of course the legendary Adam Savage of Mythbusters fame. Her videos are generally very light-hearted and incredibly entertaining, and if you haven't already, they are well worth checking out. So on Monday evening Irish time, Simone uploaded a video entitled I Have a Brain Tumor, and in it she explains that she's been having some problems with her eye being swollen and recently developing a little bit of pain as well. So obviously she paid her doctor a visit, and after some tests were run, unfortunately it turned out that she has a tumour about the size of a golf ball growing in her brain. As far as doctors can tell, it is not cancerous, and she will be going for surgery sometimes toward the end of May to have it removed. She does go on to talk about the risks associated with the procedure, and despite her ever humorous nature, it does understandably get a little emotional at times, but on the whole I come away from it thinking that she has the right attitude at the moment and is justifiably optimistic. And I'm going to leave a link in the description so that you can go and check that out for yourself. And I genuinely feel for her here. I've never really been through anything like that. Any minor health worries I've had have generally turned out to be nothing, so I can't imagine how scary it is to get news like that and for something to turn out to be something serious after all. There's been a huge outpouring of support on Twitter and YouTube, and I suppose I just want to add my own to that really. I suppose if someone were watching, I would say to just look after yourself and take the time you need. And I'm guessing that I speak for every subscriber and fan when I say that we will be here waiting for you when you return, and I just want to wish you the speediest of recoveries. The second YouTube related story that really caught me off guard this week was a Reddit post made by TotalBiscuit's PR team on his behalf, in which he announces his retirement as a games critic to his fans. For those who don't know, TotalBiscuit, John Bane, or the Cynical Brit, is a prominent games critic and commentator here on YouTube and also over on Twitch, who unfortunately has been battling cancer for the past number of years. In the post he gives some details about the state of his health and the reasoning behind his decision to quit and spend what time he has with his family. And I think rather than go into it all myself, I'm just going to leave in the description for you to read it as he wrote it. I will say, however, that in true TBE fashion, he does mention that he plans to continue working on the Co-optional podcast here on YouTube and also streaming over on Twitch. Now this announcement really came as a shock for me for a lot of reasons. Firstly, because I am a fan of his work, particularly his witty reviews and critiques, and most notably his WTF series here on YouTube, and his passion and his presence and the seeming ease with which he runs these shows during his illness has seemed to make it just some sort of a minor convenience that has been getting in the way of what he wants to do, and that everything is going to turn out alright in the end. The second thing that gets me is that John is literally only a few months older than me, and since he went public with his diagnosis, it has gotten me trying to put myself into his shoes, and I can't imagine how I would deal with something like that if I were to be going through the same thing, and I honestly don't think that I would be showing the same strength of character that he is. The problem, of course, with saying anything to or about a YouTuber, as TB himself would no doubt agree, is that the relationship between creators and fans is often a pretty one-sided thing. While we as the audience get to know the creator rather well, to them we are generally speaking strangers, and I'm very aware of that, that when, as a fan, I wish John and his family and friends all the best. TB, you are a voice that has given me comfort and kept me company in dark times, informed me in times of uncertainty, and played no small part in inspiring me and no doubt countless others to try to follow our passions, and for that I am very grateful. I'm not entirely sure how to go from this to the next thing that I want to talk about, but I am going to say that I'm going to leave some links in the description where John talks about his diagnosis, and also the recent interview with Ethan and Hila over on the H3 podcast, where he talks very openly about his battle and gives some no bullshit practical advice that's definitely worth hearing. And the final thing I want to share my thoughts on today is something which, to my mind at least, is a little more lighthearted than the last two topics, and that is, of course, the newly imposed Irish sugar tax. Tuesday saw the introduction of the new tax, which follows hot on the heels of the introduction of a similar tax over in the UK. The tax itself, which is specifically targeting soft drinks, has seen an additional 20 cent per litre applied to drinks with a concentration of over 5 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres, and a charge of 30 cent per litre if the concentration is over 8 grams per 100 millilitres. Fruit juice, milk products and alcohol are all exempt. The new tax is being rolled out as a step to tackling the obesity crisis here in Ireland, and seems to be designed mostly to target children and teenagers who are deemed to be most at risk, and it is hoped that it will discourage habits from forming early on. The tax is predicted to generate somewhere in the region of about 40 million in the first year, assuming that those estimates are accurate. Now, this is something that has been floating around for a long time now, both nationally and internationally, with people on both sides arguing their points. And to be honest with you, I broadly fall into the group that think this is a pretty naive move and won't really achieve much more than generating a little bit of extra revenue for the state. Now, while I do have mostly negative feelings toward this, I do see some positives coming out of it too. But before I get into that, I want to say that I think it's going to be a kind of an interesting thing to see exactly how much this ends up generating for the Exchequer, and if it will be anything near what they are hoping for. As Conor Pope of the Irish Times pointed out this week, somewhere in the region of 3/4 of the soft drinks already sold in this country fall below the minimum threshold, so they will be automatically exempt from the tax, and we are definitely going to see more and more companies dropping the sugar content of their drinks, which, to be fair, has already been happening over the past few years, and I think that this tax is just going to accelerate that, which on the face of it seems like a good thing, but then inevitably they are going to have to replace this with artificial sweeteners, which some researchers are pointing out may be linked to weight gain, which is the thing that we are supposed to be tackling in the first place. Now, I've no doubt that some advocates of the tax are well intentioned and consider this a step in the right direction, and I'm sure that on some level concern for public health went through the enlightened minds of government when introducing the tax. But ever the skeptic, I do think that when you look at the timing of this coinciding with the UK tax and the wider context of a need to broaden the tax base here in Ireland, it starts to look less and less noble, and that the public health angle is just something to help the medicine go down, pun most definitely intended. I think that if this was at its core a move to tackle sugar consumption and a move to improve public health, we would have seen things along the lines of new regulations for manufacturers and importers, looking at things like sugar content limits, container size, and perhaps labelling as well. Now, saying that, it does remain to be seen if the tax will be expanded over time to include other products, or if any follow-up legislation or regulation is brought in. And I think that would probably go along with to changing my mind on this, but for now I just see it as a way of generating some extra revenue, thinly veiled as a public health move. The internet, of course, being what it is, has seen a bit of talk and outrage over the tax, with some arguing that once again we have a tax introduced which seems to specifically target poorer demographics. And as a person who's not exactly rolling in money and who may or may not have developed a bit of a fupa lately, I say that I do not feel targeted on this standpoint. Really doesn't fly with me, though I do appreciate your concern for the poor, ignorant, fat people who cannot possibly do without a bottle of soda. Obviously I'm joking there a little bit, but I do think I need to be silly when people are making silly statements like that too. We have to realise that this is not a tax on basic necessities. We are talking about a luxury item with little to no nutritional benefits, and as doctors will tell you, the associated spikes in blood sugar from the consumption of these things is most definitely a contributing factor in development of diabetes. Final thought on this is that while I disagree with the tax and I don't hold out much hope for it having any great impact, since people are people and increases to cigarette prices haven't turned us into a nation of non-smokers, the positive is that at least this is sparking some kind of conversation. I mean, here I am talking about it, and perhaps the levy will discourage some people, or at the very least get people thinking about some of the products that we're consuming and what they are doing to our health, and maybe it will bring some awareness to kids too. I don't know. For myself, I don't generally drink a lot of this kind of stuff, and I don't really see the tax having any impact on my habits, and I can imagine the same is going to be true of many other people. We'll grumble for a few days about it and then habitualise and continue on business as usual. And I think the same thing is going to happen with younger people too. And that's where I'm at with this. Feel free to let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you think I missed out on anything. And that basically wraps everything up from me today. Let me know where your head is at with any of this. It's been a pretty heavy video, and I've tried to end on something of a lighter note. If there's a demand for something like this, who knows, maybe I might do it again, but as I said at the beginning, I am pretty inconsistent, and I think that's just going to be the way with things on the channel, at least for the foreseeable future anyway. So who knows. Anyway, with that all said and done, I am going to take this opportunity to say thank you very much for tuning in. You have been watching Bloomer Brown on YouTube, and I will see you next time.